Hey, everybody. Welcome to Voices from the Mausoleum for another author interview. If you can't tell by now, we do not have a guest for this episode because Angel is our special guest for this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. First time on the channel, right?
Yeah. Where do I put my hands? No.
Oh, well, yeah. So we're here to talk about Angel's first solo anthology, All the Little Voices. Well, first, congratulations. It's coming out. When does it come out again?
So the Friday after Thanksgiving. So
Yeah.
the 24th, I think.
24th. And it's just digital first, or?
No, both will be released at the same time. It'll be digital. It is on Kindle. It will be on Kindle Unlimited as well. And then it'll be paperback.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about kind of the process, right? So what's the story behind All the Little Voices and how it came to be?
So this anthology is a product of what happens when I get rejected for stories too many times. I literally it was a weird thing because a lot of my book projects, are for other people, they're not for me. And so I just kind of was overwhelmed by the concept of putting anything written out into the world. And I had a couple story acceptances that were out, and I was like, well, I've got all these stories that are reject stories. And I'm like, there were one in particular. This is really, I think, the one that kind of just jump started the whole thing, because there's a story in the anthology called There Is Only Us. And it started out, it was meant to be, I only wrote it, honestly, because I wanted to submit to an open call. And I was so certain. I'd heard how hard this press was hard, really difficult to get into. Mm-hmm. And it turned out that I think they were looking for something that wasn't really what I understood the assignment to be. So, but basically the story ended up being so personal and so close to me that the rejection hurt. I've had rejections. I've been ignored more than I've had rejections, actually. But it was it killed me because the story ended up being so much more than I thought it was going to be on an emotional level. And so at the same time that one was open, there was another queer anthology that was open. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll have a better chance with this one. This one seems to be a little more open to all kinds of things, and it's not so narrow. And I got a rejection from that one as well. And I was like, and I had made up my mind. I was telling, because just in general as a support system, but my partner was a sensitivity reader because it involves a trans woman, and I needed her to read it and tell me kind of how she felt about what I wrote. And so, so I was talking to her about it, and I was like, you know what? I was like, if this gets rejected again, which I knew it was going to, but if it does, I was like, I'm just going to put it in my own collection. I'm just going to do my own collection. Yeah. So that's kind of what I did. And it has been through, several people just constantly encouraging me to do it, just to finally just do it. My partner was one of them. Obviously Kat Valor was another one. And it was just something that I was like, I'm just finally going to do it. So there's 4 stories in the anthology that have been rejected or ignored. And then there's 2 that were heavily changed in the editing process for their acceptances. And I really wanted to go back and make them what I wanted them to be. So I went back and added all my stuff back and then re-edited them and put them in there as well. So that's 4, 5, 6. That's 6 of the 10 that come from other sources. And then the others are brand new.
Yeah. So a big part of it is sort of just taking back your voice, right? Taking back your power. So there's a lot to, is that what fueled the title, or what sort of fuels the title?
Honestly, I keep making or wanting everything to tie back into all that we do here, because I think that, there's a lot of, and I have respect for all content creators. It doesn't matter if they do just movies or if they do just games. It doesn't matter. I have respect and love for all content creators, especially in the horror genre. And But I think that one of the things that I love so much about the channel is how well-rounded it is and how many things it encompasses. And I just like want that to also spread out into other pieces of anything that I do outside of content creating. And so I was thinking of something voice-wise, and I was thinking, I had looked at I got the cover before I had the title, of course.
Right.
And I thought, man, I was like, what could it be? And I was thinking about the story outlines that I had and what I wanted to do. And I was like, man, it's really kind of a lot of different stuff. And it's, these were things that I put out into the world that the world just didn't want. And it was just suddenly I just thought, like all the little voices, like all the little things that I put into this that no one else wanted at the time. And now I can out myself. And then just again, like how different, well, at least I feel like all the stories are so vastly different. And so I just wanted it to kind of show that it's a multitude of things. It's not just on stories. It's not just monsters. It's not just queer horror. It's all of these things together, just like our channel.
I think that's one of the first things that really impressed me, like while reading it, is just that you really do run the gamut of subgenre here.
You feel that? You think that too? You don't think it's like too similar? None of them are too similar?
I don't think so, right?
Okay.
We're talking like, I mean, I know we're not really doing spoilers, but could we talk about themes?
Yeah, sure. Of course.
Yeah, right. Because you're running like possession stories, inanimate objects coming to life, creatures, found footage.
Yeah.
Right. It really does run the gamut here. And it's so impressive and it's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I really, that was the goal, because I think one of the best things about making or reading collections from other authors, because I probably own more anthologies, horror anthologies, than I do like individual novels and novellas. And one of the reasons is because I love getting a book in your hand that's got like a million different things going on. And when you read anthologies, especially, I feel like, because I primarily read horror, but in the horror genre, and you get to see all of the things that these authors can come up with, all of the ways they can tell a story, all of the things that, the different subgenres and the crazy worlds they can build. And that was something that I was really important to me, because there's actually a couple of stories that actually got removed from my original list because they were too similar. And I was like, I don't like that they're that similar. Like, I'm just going to add components of this, kind of combine the two, and then like go into that. Like into the walls is what I almost said. In the walls is actually a combination of two stories. The other one was called The Decay. And it's just a combination of two stories because the elements were too similar. And I didn't want that. I wanted it to be vastly different.
Okay. That makes sense. That is I think I told you that was one of my personal favorites.
Yeah.
Is In the Walls. I just thought it was really cool. It felt a little like Monster House meets like Little Shop of Horrors, kind of.
Yeah. That one actually is so funny, because there's a couple of these stories that when Kat was beta reading for me, we went through. This one and Alone are the two that we went back and forth about the most, because there were specific things I was trying to nail, and I needed another perspective to help me make sure that what I was trying to convey was getting across. And the other thing is In the Walls is like the theme of that, like the overall, like actually what's happening isn't a super uncommon thing in fiction. And like there's video games that have that theme or that concept. And so I was worried that it might have been too cliche. And so I was trying to make sure, like when she was giving me feedback, that I was learning like ways to make it not cliche, make it not like all of the other things that it's similar to, or that I got inspiration from. So it ended up being, it was that one and Alone were the two. I think we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Well, I think what makes a lot of your stories unique, like even if it shares details with other stories or other things that might be out there, it's a lot of the characters that you created and their emotional baggage, or like their what their desires are or what they've gone through, and sort of their emotional journey in the stories, I think is really what sets it apart from others that might have, a similar concept.
Yeah, I think so. My writing journey started with role playing on forums. And I think that's probably one of the things that makes those emotions, like why it's so like I focus on that a lot when I am writing things. And it's because that was one of the main things you had to convey when you were role playing. That wasn't so action driven. It was more
Mhm.
about this inner monologue and like how you're feeling and what you're thinking about and what you're going to do. And sometimes those thoughts are really normal thoughts and sometimes they're not. And sometimes they're really good. Like you're good to your core kind of thoughts. And then sometimes they're not like, and so it's, yeah, thank you for saying that. That means a lot. Yeah, the emotions are, I think, and I write things that I want to read, and
Mhm.
emotions and characters and the way that they're shaped and how I'm connected to them is what keeps me engaged with what I'm reading. So I just kind of always thought that was super important.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What were maybe some of the biggest challenges in putting this together?
Oh, arguing with Kat about alone. No, no, I think the biggest thing I think for me was I had a really strict timeline on this, and creatively, and I'm sure you know this, like you can't always, maybe there's people who can, but I don't think that's the norm. You can't always just sit down and just write everything you want to write. That's not
Mm.
typically how the brain works when it comes to muse. Muse is very fickle. And so, when I got kind of pushed out my timelines and stuff because of all the Ingram nonsense with the bathroom anthologies,
Mhm.
I really screwed myself on giving myself enough time to get these stories where I wanted them. So it was this thing of like, I have a November's my deadline. Like I want it to be out in November. But at the same time, I don't want to sacrifice anything for the sake of just getting it out in November. Like I don't, that's not going to work either. And so it really just came down to trying to come up with the stories that I wanted to be in this and how many of them got scrapped. There was a last minute change. I think I removed the found footage one originally.
Oh, really?
Um, and I removed it completely. I was like, I'm never going to be able to finish this. I can't make it unique. I'm worried about the formatting, like all these things. And so I removed it from the list. And I was originally going to write another one. And I did write so much of this. And it's essentially a short from a role play that I tried to do multiple times and just couldn't find committed writers, and that it will one day hopefully maybe be a novel, because it's a lot of detail and it's a lot of stuff. And so I thought, well, maybe I can shorten one of the characters and like their opening experiences into a short. And the
Mhm.
title of it, Kat loved this, was Blood Magic Fuck Ups. That was going to be the name of it. And I got all the way to the ritual of the blood magic, and I was like, nope. I was like, I don't have enough time. There's no way I can give this what it needs to be, what I would want it to be.
Yeah.
So I went back and I started working on a warning dismissed, which is the found footage one. And I was like, I rewrote that one like 6 times. I'm not exaggerating. Like I took out so many tropes that I had originally in it that I didn't realize I was writing them. And you know what I mean? Until they were
Yeah.
like out. And then and yeah, it was like I had another one called The Interview that I pulled. I had like the one called Mad Here, or All Mad Here, is actually a role play audition from like 2013 that
Really?
I wrote, and I just redid it. I took out
Oh,
all the
shoot.
stuff from the storyline that didn't belong to me,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
remade those pieces my own. And it was just so many back and forth, removing, adding back, changing, rewriting. Like it was, and that was stressful because I was worried about the timeline too. So that was
Yeah.
probably, thank God I had like, so Kat edited and formatted this. I already had the cover taken, was under control. And so I was working with people who are very good at what they do. And so when the time finally came and it was like, all I got to do is upload this stuff to Amazon, it was like cake. Like I just uploaded it.
Right,
I
that
didn't
was the
have to
easy part,
upload
the
it.
upload and all that.
Oh my God. Like I got to that part of the bathroom anthology and had to fix the damn cover like 60 times. I had to fix the page counts like multiple times. There were things, and I'll be honest, I should not have had to do those things, but here we are. And so I had to do a lot of fixing and tweaking, and it made it such a frustrating process. So when I literally just hit upload and it was like done, I was like, oh, thank God.
Wow. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Kat and Christy from Grandpappy Design, they know what they're doing. So I was in good hands.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's beautiful. I mean, I don't have my hands on a physical copy just yet, but I mean, that's gorgeous. That is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. And then that's the back of it. Yeah. And the back isn't a blurb because I was like, I have no idea what to write for a collection. So it's just, I mean, a blurb, the description or
Mhm.
whatever. It's actually just a blurb from Kat Valor. It says, because she was my beta reader too. All the Little Voices is one of the most beautiful and ambitious collections I've ever read. Each story serves as a door into an entirely different world with a massive scope and utterly horrific implications. This book is a must read for those seeking more speculative horror. Kat Valor, author of Revenge Arc.
It's a damn good blurb.
She's the best. Yeah. I was like, I reached out to Christy at Grim Poppy, and
Mhm.
I was like, can we just like put them all over the butterflies? Because like the back is so pretty. I don't want to cover up,
Yeah,
the
just sort of have
art.
like more of like a wispy sort of.
Yeah. So she just kind of did it around them and she nailed it because I was worried the blurb was too long to do it and I was gonna have to think of something else. But I really didn't think it was gonna fit on the cover, and I didn't want it on the inside. I wanted it on the outside of the book. So
Yeah,
anyway,
no, that makes
they did.
sense.
No, they did an amazing job. I'm very like I could not be more pleased with how this turned out. It's stunning. Like, and it's crazy because when I had actually paid like $300 for a cover to be made for my collection. And it ended up not being anything that wowed me for this specific thing.
Oh,
And
okay.
I know it was like, I was like, well, I've got to find a way to use it.
Gotta use it
And
somehow.
I will. Like, I'll find something to use it for. I think I have an idea of what I want to do, but it just didn't sing to me for this, you know. And I literally like instead of like doom scrolling on YouTube or whatever, I just go look through Grim Poppy's covers to see if there's any I want to hoard because I own like 30 of them. And I saw this one and I was like, "Oh my god, that would be perfect." Like
Yeah.
it's elegant, it's weird, like I love it. And it was available. And I mean, I'm a patron, so I didn't even have to pay full price for it. And then she did the wrap for what feels like nothing. So it worked out great because I think it's perfect. The people when they're commenting on my post about it so far cannot like love the cover so much. And I'm like, perfect. Like
It's gotta feel
buy it.
right, like you said. You know,
Yeah.
you don't wanna just sort of mishmash stuff together. You want it to feel like it's getting the the feeling across of like what you wrote.
Yeah. And I think this does a great job of that. I think the mask thing works for a few different reasons. The florals and the feminine stuff kind of going on around it. Like I letting go of the butterflies from the hands. I don't know. Like there's so many little things when you look at it, especially if you've read everything. It's like, okay, like yeah, this is a good fit. It worked out for the best. And it's just literally like the most random event that could have happened was I just was like, let me just go see if there's another cover I want to buy that I don't have a
Mhm.
story for. And then I saw this one and I was like, no way is that still available. Couldn't believe it because it's an older one. She's had it for a while.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I love it. It's perfect. I'm so happy with it.
When you talk about how sort of the cover encapsulates all of the themes and the feelings of the stories,
Yeah.
maybe we could talk a little bit about just the overall themes. Were there any commonalities from story to story that you wanted to? Were there purposeful connections between any of the stories, or just in general, what were you hoping people sort of felt, or what feelings were invoked in reading?
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest thing was I wanted them to feel that these were real people because I think that, you know, when you're talking about like Soul Eater, for example, you've got a man of the cloth who isn't so sure that he really wants to believe in God. And I think that discussing faith from the side point of disbelief or questions or concern, I think is a very real
Mhm.
thing. And I think he brings up Caleb, the main character. I think he brings up a lot of really valid questions, which of course are reflected from my own belief systems, but he brings up a lot of valid questions. And I think, like that one in particular, I wanted it to feel realistic, like someone who has seen the all of the bad and still isn't sure that the good is actually good. Like I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot of that kind of stuff. There's, in the story, like in the walls, that's a very lonely, like heart wrenching kind of story about someone who feels very alone in the world and then finding someone or something that matches in those feelings and being able to find that in each other. And I think that all of these things are things that at least, I've gone through personally. And I know plenty of people have gone through so many of those things.
Yeah.
The There Is Only Us is a story about a trans woman and a cis woman who are in a relationship together and the fears and violence that kind of encompass what being in those relationships can be like, and how dangerous and upsetting it can be to just be with who you want to be with in the real world. And that one in particular, I took a lot from, things that my partner talked to me about, how she felt when she came out as trans, and then things that I dealt with when I was out as bisexual, and like those kind of things. And it's just, I wanted everything to just feel real. Like I want the people to feel real. These are not like perfect circumstance characters. They're all broken, every single one of them. And I feel like that is more realistic than characters that are just natural goods or all good and they don't have any flaws and there's no darkness in their souls. And it's like, that's so unrealistic. And to me, it makes the stories more relatable when you're like, okay, I can see, where these people are coming from. I mean, even in the one, the Mirror State, when you've got the couple, it's a lesbian couple, but there's this very real side of the partner to want to fix what's wrong with her partner and thinking she knows what's best for her and how she can help. And all she did was make everything worse. And that's so relatable. Like I don't like anyone that I love or care about to feel powerless in being able to help someone that I love, whether it's in a relationship, platonic, family, friends, whatever. And 9 times out of 10, when we get into this fix it mode, we don't help because it's not always what they need, because we're looking at it from what we want to do. And I think that that's also a very realistic thing to experience and feel. So I think, they don't technically connect. I think all of the stories that have female protagonists are all very strong women. There's a lot of like, I am woman, hear me roar kind of stuff, and some comments about that. But I think all in all, it's just very real people that I made up stories about. So,
yeah. But I think it's sort of, I think that's sort of why the, in these walls, I think that was one sort of that really spoke to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why that one really jumped out at me, like probably the most. But I think we've all like, so I think what you're touching on is like fantastic, right? There's something for everyone in all of these stories.
Yeah. I'm glad you feel that way. Yeah. In these walls is, it's so funny. So I know that these are my stories. If I mess up the titles, it's because I just came up with titles at the very end because I know what to call them. Titles for stories is not my strong suit. I had There is Only Us written for 3 months before I had a title for it. So if I forget titles, it's not because I'm dumb. It's just because like I did them last and they don't stick with me as much as the others. There's like, I wonder if I can find it really quick. There's like a quote that Tara says, or Taryn says in the walls. And it's like one of these things, like, I'm just going to tell you, like when I was writing, there's a specific part that when I was writing it, I was crying.
Oh.
And I can't remember where it is. I think it's towards the end. Okay. That's when she's talking to the agent. I think it's after the slip up or whatever.
Yeah. Is it sort of like when she's kind of accepting that this is the way things are going to be?
Yeah. And she says these things like, I wish I could remember. Like when she's having the conversation with the house, which I don't think gives too much away, but when she's talking to the house, she's like learning, Emma, is it like, so the last section of the story is mutually beneficial. And it's that part. It's when the house is like begging her not to forsaken her.
Yeah.
And the house is like going on and on and on. And the thoughts, okay, I don't think I can stay here like this. That's Taryn. The house says, please, I need an answer. And then she goes on to ask specific questions to the stuff, and the house, and she says, is that what you need? And the house says, yes. And then she's like, I don't have it in me. I can't do that. The house says, please. And it's like every time that the house begs, Taryn falls more and more into wanting to be what it wants her to be, what it needs her to be. And then, she goes, it's like she had done this so many times with her family, with her friends, with partners. Still, she had ended up completely empty-handed. And then the house says, lonely. And so I'm going through this section and I'm like, literally, I was like in tears, like finished writing it. Like you get to that last paragraph and it's just like, it felt like it's such a non-realistic circumstance, but it's full of reality. And it was just very heartbreaking to write that part. Like it just really got to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and especially in the last few years, right? Everyone a lot of people felt very isolated, right? I think loneliness in
Sure.
general is a very common thing, but also loneliness in relationships, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
Separation from family, it kind of covers all the facets. It's like
yeah,
she has isolation from her family. She doesn't have any friends. She doesn't keep partners. It's just her. And that's not, it's hard to
mhm,
connect when you're just so used and not necessarily more comfortably numb in the concept of being alone.
yeah.
And so, but I got to that part and I was like, I was like wiping my tears while I was finished reading
Oh,
this.
it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I think a lot of people also might be curious to hear maybe some of your like the writing process for yourself and
Oh my God.
what
Okay.
helps you kind of stay on track with the writing project or what helps
Mhm.
you get organized or just yeah, just a little bit of like whatever helps you in your process.
Yeah. So doing this collection was super unorganized. But I think that's because so many of the stories were already written.
Mhm.
So for me, the two things that keep me focused on what I need to do when I'm writing that help me tune out everything else and the scrolling and wanting to socialize and do other things, like I am like really into aesthetics. So like when I started getting to the end and I started feeling scatterbrained, like I wasn't going to be able to finish, I just kept going to look at the cover.
Mhm.
And it's like I'm very driven by pictures and like I do mood boards sometimes. I posted a couple of
Oh,
those. And then music, like everything that I think I've ever written has a song or multiple songs that go with it. And there are things like that help me just because it makes me feel like I have to focus on what I'm doing instead of like not doing it. Other than that, I mean, what I have learned from a staying organized and like this process is, my next book project, I actually, it's not, I think it's two of them I've done this for so far. I've written out the outline. So I know every step that the story is going to take. So then when I have to circle back and write it, like the one I'm working on now, I have my things. And then and that having that, like, I've had to go back and change it a few times, but that's kind of the point is you at
yeah.
least have all of your ideas in one place. And then you can kind of fix plot holes as you go. You can kind of add things to characters as you go. You can combine, chapters or change your style of how you want to do your chapters or that kind of thing. So I think moving forward, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever do a collection, I guess we'll see, but I have tons of stories like that I've been working on. And I think the thing that has helped me the most is doing the outlines because it's like we were talking about the other day. I get so into the planning. And
Mm,
when I'm into the planning, I can't do any of the writing
yeah.
because I can't focus on what I need to do for that section of the story. And I really struggle to write out of order. I don't really, it kind of is like sometimes I've done it a few times and it's been fine, but I've learned that maybe that's not best practice, at least not for me, because then I forget stuff and I have to go back and or include things.
Mm,
Um,
right, right.
but yeah, I mean, this one was very unorganized because this is my first thing by myself. I was also still dealing with all of the stuff from the other anthologies when I was getting this one ready. But the biggest things that keep me on track is I need things that look like what I'm writing about, things to look at, and music to kind of just make me feel like I'm in that zone to write whatever it is that I'm going to write.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
creating your atmosphere.
Yes. Because if I'm listening to, I don't know, Post Malone, I probably can't write, like something else. Like, I don't know what a good example of that would be, but like I have
Yeah.
like very specific things that I can listen to that really just bump up the muse for me to be able to focus and like get in the headspace.
Oh yeah. I know I can't do anything with lyrics. It needs to be sort of all
Oh, see,
instrumental.
I can.
You can?
Yeah, because the songs that have lyrics that are problematic, I'm not going to listen to while I'm writing either. Like Ice Ice Baby, I can't do anything listening to that song. So there's songs like that where I get so wrapped up in the song that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But most of the time, it's very carefully selected songs that I
Oh,
know I can listen to and not really think about what I'm listening to. Just get into the space.
okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm very easily distracted.
I am too. I think music just isn't usually a distraction. Usually, I
Mhm.
can movies. Yeah, Like I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna put this on for like a background. That's a joke. Like I don't. There's no background anything with me. If it's on, I'm watching it. Doesn't matter how many times I've seen it. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna watch the whole thing. I used to watch when I first moved out on my own and I was like scared of everything. I hated being on my own when I first moved out. It was so scary. And I had to watch something to go. I'd watch something to fall asleep to every night. And it was Troy. The problem is I love Troy. That's one of my favorite movies. And so I would end up staying up watching this 30-hour movie and then have to find something else to go to sleep to.
Oh no. Yeah, for me it's sort of like really old sitcoms I can fall asleep to.
Okay.
That's for me. It's like if I throw on like, I don't know, like Three's Company or so, like the old stuff.
Yeah, I could probably fall. I thought my other one that I do actually equally love, but is one I can actually do that too, is Futurama.
Oh yeah.
Because I've seen every episode literally 100 times, so I can just turn that on. That is probably one of very few that I can just put on and not focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But it still catches me sometimes, but not not as much as some of the other things.
So images and music, and so these are sort of not necessarily muses, but things that help you feel inspired. Or are there sort of other elements of inspiration that you pull from?
Yeah, and I think again that all comes from role playing. When you
All
do
role
role
playing.
playing on the online forums, everybody's making images and sharing things, and it's all based off of the way your profile. Because the first year I ever did this was in 2003, and it was on MySpace. And so like I learned to code because I wanted to write role play and have a pretty profile. Like
Hell
it was
yeah.
ridiculous. And so it was, but you were judged on your page and you were judged by your pictures and the way everything looked, and not so much in the later years, because in the later years it got a little bit better as far as that goes. But then that's what I would look at. It would give me story ideas. Like I can't even tell you how many stories or plots I've come up with just because I saw a picture. Like it's crazy. There's this one model, and I have her name listed somewhere. I cannot think of it. She is, I think she's over 40, but she does like pinup modeling, and she's stunning. But she looks like a crime boss. And so, like one time I saw this picture, I've never seen her before in my life, and she's like leaning on a mirror, and she's looking at the camera, but the mirror, the reflection's looking at her. It's opposite.
Yeah.
And I was like, I came up with who this woman was, who she was married to, what her history was, how many husbands she had killed. Like I had like a whole thing from one picture, one
Awesome.
picture. And so, and obviously it's not horror related, but I wrote a lot of crime characters because crime was one of my favorite things to write. There wasn't a lot of horror writers. It was mostly crime. And, but it was like, it's so easy to find things that if you just randomly look at stuff or you find something, you're just like immediately like, I got all these ideas. And so, and music is one of those other things because you always had profile songs. It was a big deal for a while for people to make playlists to represent their character's journey. And so, we swapped those and we all had them. And so those are things I think that are just embedded in my creative process because I rollerblade for 20 years, from 2003 till present day. I don't do it anymore. But I sort of quit after my last writing partner passed away. But it's 20 years of doing it. And that was the way to communicate things outside of just your writing. And so it's just kind of embedded in me.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's not something I've ever really dabbled in, sort of like online like role play sort of element.
It's like D&D, but without dice, basically.
Right. I feel like it totally sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yeah, which is actually why I loved D&D. I could give two less about the fighting. I just wanted to talk to everybody and like build out stories and backgrounds and like, oh my God, like
in character.
Yes, I love stuff like that. So yeah, it's just a natural part of the process for me.
Maybe you could write a choose your own adventure book. I feel like that's almost.
Oh, maybe those are tricky, but maybe.
I know. I turn to page 30 if you make a right.
And then you're like, don't like it, and you go back.
Did you read those as a kid?
I did, and I cheated every time because I would get mad about the choices.
Oh. Well, I remember getting, because I think Goosebumps had a handful of those.
I think so too. And there was another one that was young adult horror that had them too. It wasn't Goosebumps, it was something else. I cannot think of what it's called.
Like a YA horror?
Yeah, a similar vein as Goosebumps, but they had several that were spooky. Shivers.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember those? Maybe it was Shivers. It might not have been, but I think it could have been. So, but yeah, those, I read those all the time. And then when I would get mad or somebody would die or whatever would happen, I'd be like, and I'd go back to the start over. Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, I think they expected most people would do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to learn all of the stories, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Any pieces of advice that you would give aspiring writers?
Yeah. And this is a hard, I'm going to take a sip of water for this one.
Mm-hmm. I'll join you.
This is a hard one because I myself can't take this advice. Don't let rejections make you feel like there's not a market for what you have to say. Going through the rejection process made me realize I will probably never submit to anything, and I will always do my own publishing. Because I had two instances. It's also hard too, because these did have word cutoffs, but having people change what I wrote, and I don't mean commas, and I don't mean tense. I mean like changing what I wrote or telling me that like parts of my stories don't need to be in there when they do, is not, it doesn't work for me. I'm sure you're aware that I like control issues. So, but the biggest thing is, right, is I had this story, There Is Only Us. And it was so meaningful to me that I literally cried when it got its first rejection. Yeah. And that's going into it knowing I was going to get it. Okay. And I still was like devastated. And I'm like, that was such a horrible day because a bunch of other like really bad things happened. But when that happened, I was genuinely really upset. And everyone's like, oh, don't take it personally. It's like, yeah, but I think you're allowed to allow yourself some grace. Nobody wants a rejection. And it does feel personal because you took the time and energy to write something. And a lot of us write from things we know. I mean, one of the things that you worked on recently was from a memory that you had.
Yeah.
Like we write from things that we know and things that we are meaningful to us. So I think one thing I will say is two things. Do not let rejections make you feel like there's not a need for what you want to say or a market for it. Two, if you are one of those people that tell people not to take rejections personal, how about instead of saying that, maybe saying, yeah, it really hurts. Please don't stop writing. Because I think that that's the better avenue. That's the better argument. It's because it is personal and it does hurt, and that's normal and that's valid. You're not allowed to be garbage to the person who rejected your story. You're not allowed to lash out at the community for people who did get accepted, but you are allowed to mourn that possibility no longer being a possibility. I think that that's normal. Yeah. That's fine. And there's a healthy way to handle it. So instead of telling people not to take things personal, it's just business. Okay. But it's business that I put my heart into, and I'm allowed to be upset about it for a few days, you know?
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, like in a creative field, in the creative space, right? Rejection is hard, kind of whether you're a writer, an actor, right, a painter, anything, right? It's sort of, you put so much of yourself into what whatever your outlet may be.
Well, and I get pissed off when people write on my top 5 werewolf picks that they don't like my movie choices. I'm like, I don't care. I didn't ask if you liked my movie choices. They're mine. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of that stuff is like, these are things that I feel, things that I care about. You don't have to care about the same thing, but it's hard because I always see people say like, oh, don't take it personal. And it's like, I get the comfort concept behind that of like, yeah, well, you have to distance yourself. But I think if you distance yourself from what you're writing to where it's not meaningful anymore, then why are you even doing it? You know?
That's true.
I think other than that, I think when you're writing things, follow your gut. Try not to get discouraged by changes or removing stories and then adding them back to your list. Or, I think it's just important to do what feels right to you, even if you get feedback that's on the contrary. That does not include things like sensitivity reading. That's different. But as far as okay, so one of the examples I have is that I was actually originally told to remove the story about Caleb's background in Soul Eater with the child that he first, what do I want to say? The first time he ever had to do anything with a possessed child.
Oh,
That
yeah.
memory that he has of what happened to that child, I was told to remove that from the story. And I was like, no, like it
Hmm.
literally sets up everything else in the story about why he feels the way that he feels.
Yeah.
It's literally like, I mean, I guess that stuff can just exist, but I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, no.
Was there, I mean, if you could talk about it, can you, was there like a justification why to take it out? I mean,
They thought that the readers would get confused.
oh, okay.
And they didn't think that it added anything to the story and it wasn't necessary. It felt like um I don't remember the word that they used. They didn't use the word fluff, but that's how I took it was that section doesn't need to be in there because it's just extra stuff that's not needed. And but it's not. It's very relevant to literally everything else in the story and why Caleb feels the way that he does. And so it was just like, I was like, so, and my point in even bringing that up is because like, it's kind of like, like we say this as parents, we're like, nobody knows our kid better than us. Nobody knows your stories better than you. And if you think something needs to take 2 more paragraphs because you just really need to express these things and what you feel this character has been through, do it.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, it's your story. These are, these are the words that you want to share with the world. This
Yeah.
is, I mean, it's important for it to be as close to your vision as possible.
Yeah. And it ties back into not taking it personal. It's like, if you're not going to do what is meaningful for you, then why are you doing it? Like it needs to be. And I know what happens is like, don't get me wrong. I'm sitting over here saying all of this and I'm like, I want my book to do well. I want people to want it. I want people to read it. I want people to love it. I think we all do.
Mhm.
But I think there's also still room for me to be like, it's okay that not everybody is going to love this. Because I know that that's the case. The things that I wrote are not going to sing for everybody. And that's fine. And that sucks because obviously in a perfect world, right? But it's hard to separate yourself. But I mean, trust me, I'm not one of those people that has the book order following that like some of these other people have. And I still was just like, I don't care. Like, I'm just going to do the things that I want to do. And at least when it goes out, no matter how successful or unsuccessful it is, it was something that I was proud of, that I will be proud of,
And you know what? The people that need to read your work will read your work.
Yeah.
The right people will find it. Right. I think it's just like, you put it out there into the world. I believe it'll find the eyes that are looking for it.
Yeah, I think that's probably true too. I think and I have found that even with reading, like I just read a collection recently. Shoot. I can't think of the guy's name that wrote it. Anyway, and it was weird because I had been reading it off and on. It was an early reader, so I had some time to kind of putz around before I needed to have it finished. And it was interesting because everything was flowing as far as like what I was reading and liking and stuff. But then there was like this moment where I got to like a specific story, and it just like hit different because of the time in my life, the time of the week or whatever it was that I like found that story. It was just kind of interesting, serendipity or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Fate, universe, who knows?
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Magic. There we go.
Magic. There's witchcraft too is in this book. You really do run the gamut.
Yeah, it's got, what I was thinking about, I was looking at the this cat, I'm just telling you, Cat Velour. She just did such amazing work on that. I'm so proud. Like she did amazing. She treated me so right with this. Yeah, so it's got possessed object / haunting, whatever you want to call it. Ghost, demonic possession, monster house, I think is what you said earlier. Found footage, dark Alice in Wonderland / slasher, queer magic, monster, werewolf, which is a monster but very different than the other one, and then celestial stuff. I'm dying. So I know you got through most of your early reader. When you read Eternal Justice of Man, you have to tell me like how you felt reading that.
Okay. All right. That's Celestial.
That's the celestial one.
Okay. My senior script was like a celestial horror.
Oh my God. So you know why I wrote it? Okay. So I wrote it for a submission, but I'm not joking. This is for real. Like anybody who goes and reads this, including you, Steve, this is where the inspiration for that story came from. I get so sick of people making memes about the signs and always giving Virgo the worst answers. From which ghost face killer am I to what's my toxic trait to how do you handle relationships? And all it shows me is that whoever makes those hates Virgos. I get so irritated with that because I'm like, why are all of them? First of all, if you don't know anything about Virgos, just say you don't know. You don't have to post mean things, but like most of the time, it's not even related. So Eternal Justice of Man, which if you don't know is a Frankenstein line. It's a reference to Frankenstein for reasons that will become very clear when you read it. Like I literally was like, it's a Virgo vengeance story. Like 100%. It is a Virgo. You know what? I'm sick of all of y'all and I'm going to come out and my Virgo is going to be like top bitch. And so anyway, I literally wrote that because I get so sick of Virgo bashing. I get so sick of it. So
I know Virgos get crapped on. I mean, people say a lot about Geminis. You know what I will say? I never hear anyone talk about Capricorns. I feel like I never hear like a single thing, whether good, bad, neutral. I feel like no one talks about Capricorns. I never
think
see
because I'm a Virgo, I always see positive things. Capricorns and Virgos are supposed to be able to be close, I think.
That's why we work so well.
I think so. I think that's right if I'm remembering it right. And nobody ever better say shit about Gemini. My little baby in there is a Gemini, and I will hurt somebody. He's the best.
I think my son's Gemini too.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. Because their birthday's really close to each other.
Yeah, June 3rd. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Oliver's is the end of May. So, yes. They're both Geminis. And Oliver is definitely a Gemini, but that's okay.
Angels.
Yeah, it's literally, it's like such a mix of things. Oh, and I did want to mention this too. So the story, the second to the last one called A Change in You is actually a story I used to role play with my friend Donna. So she and I have been friends for a really long time and we'd been writing together for a really long time. And she actually died several months ago. She passed away due to complications because of cancer. And so when I was kind of piecing together, like what stories do I want to include, what I want to do, I took one of our role plays and I finished the scene. And so that's what A Change in You is. And so because of that, I decided that this was going to be dedicated to her. So my dedication reads, everyone's writing journey looks different, and mine started out writing forum-based role plays online. I met a lot of people in my time online, but the one person I will never forget was my dear friend, Donna Chavez. Donna passed away earlier this year, and I still haven't found the strength to accept this. She was a dear friend and a treasured writing partner. This book, these stories, and my courage to put this out is dedicated to her compassion, to her story, to her kindness, to her strength. We love you so much, Donna, and you're missed every day. So when you read that story, that was a role play.
You reading that was making me cry.
I know. I was tearing up too. It's so special because I feel like, I don't know if you're like this. I always read dedications to books, always. Because sometimes, aside from what I think authors put into like their writing, sometimes their dedications are really important.
Absolutely.
And I always read them. And sometimes they're just like little light, and that's fine. Yeah. But sometimes they're really deep and they mean a lot. And I want to know what did you think about when you were getting ready to dedicate this book? And so that was what I came with this one was, because I lost her just a few months ago, and it's still really difficult. And she'd gone in remission, and then it went back and forth. And then I was like, I was very careful about the way I chose to write A Change in You, because I didn't want to write too much for her because she's not here anymore. But it was from a role play that we were writing. And it was just when I decided I was going to do that, I was like, well, I have to dedicate it to her. Actually, her partner, so her boyfriend, Matt, was also one of my writing partners. And so I actually messaged him yesterday or the day before and told him, I was like, hey, so I've got this collection coming out and I did the dedication to Donna. I'd really love to send you a copy. And so I'm going to send him a copy when it's officially published and doesn't have that stupid gray mark around it anymore. So, And then he made a point to tell me that Donna would have been really proud of me and that he's proud of me. It was just this really just really sweet, wonderful moment to share, regarding like the first collection. So it's meaningful on multiple levels. But just for your sakes, I know you haven't read that. That's your next one, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is a role play story that she and I had been writing for 2 years, and it's also. Have you ever seen Hemlock Grove?
Oh, Hemlock Grove, yeah.
Okay, so that's Peter.
Oh.
And then Julia is from The Magicians. I revamped things to make them not obviously the same characters,
right.
But anyway, so Julia from The Magicians was my character, and then she wrote Peter the wolf from Hemlock. So I had to kind of change quite a few things for obvious reasons, but I took the things that we created on our own and just redid a story. But anyway, so when you get to that one, that's what that is.
Yeah, I mean, I think beautiful things start off as like fanfic, right? I mean, look at what was it, 50 Shades was fanfic for Twilight or something like that.
Yeah, that's true.
It is true, but like, well, that blew up into being its own thing.
Yeah,
what a beautiful tribute, right? Completing that story on top of the dedication, but that's yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. It was super meaningful to me to have that in there, and yeah, she was great. Like we definitely had some times where we had to take breaks from each other because we were so involved with our writing and stuff. But that's why I don't write anymore online, because once she got sick and couldn't write, I kind of lost the desire to be around. And then when she finally passed away, like I couldn't do it anymore. So I don't, but that's okay. I'm still friends with her boyfriend. We're still friends on Facebook, and he'll post some things periodically, kind of with some memories and things. But yeah, so it was just important to me when I decided I was going to do that, because I was on the fence about it for a long time. I think probably for obvious reasons. But when I realized I could make it work as a short, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do. And it was a storyline we were the most excited to finish, and we never got to it. We never got that part. And so, because we had tons of ideas, but there were things that had to happen before what happens in that story could happen. And yeah, so I got to write the very beginning of it when Julia is at the gas station. That's how it opens. I had already written that. That was my starter scene. And then we never got any further than that.
Okay.
And so anyway, so just, something.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I really like it. I mean, I'm like a sucker. It's werewolves, but anything with werewolves,
yeah. Well, I know werewolves and found footage and all that. All your favorites make their way into,
of course,
this book.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of a good place. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think that's it. Thanks for agreeing to make it weird and do this on our channel.
No, this is cool. This was fun. And when I finally finish writing something, we can,
Yeah, 100%. We'll switch around places. Yeah.
When I finally, get through my unorganized thinking. But why don't we remind everyone sort of when and where they can find all the little voices?
Yeah. So I don't think we've discussed completely when this is going out. Did we discuss?
I think we mentioned a bunch of stuff like at the top of the episode.
Yeah.
No. You mean when this?
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't really. Yeah, no, we haven't really settled on. But soon we're gonna we'll put this out pretty quick.
So the ebook is available right now for pre-order on Amazon, and then the paperback and the actual release of the ebook will be November 24th. It's a Friday after Thanksgiving. And like I said, it's on Kindle Unlimited as well. So if you have that, you can get it there, which is, no cost to you if you have it. So you can just read it for free there. And then, I'll be posting about it nonstop once it's out. So.
As will I. Yes. All right. Yay. Well, thank you everyone for checking out our conversation about angels, all the little voices. And we will see you guys real soon.
Bye.